すごいすごい。
わー、すごい。わー、何もなくなっちゃった。すごい。経験始まって以来じゃないですか。
長かった。
あんな重いものをみんな、うわー、すごい流されてる。
でしょ？どこまで向かって？
また戻っていてまた来るんですよ。あー、すごい。
動いてないよね。足動いてないな。動いてるよね。
まだ上がってきてるのか。そんなに来ませんでした。この辺はそんな。
車俺はくぐるわ。
Hi everybody, it's Kirsty. Now what you just saw was probably one of the worst things that I've ever seen. I remember it, and I saw it again on television a few days ago, and I thought, you know, that this may be a good lesson and perspective on a few things, predominantly the 29th degree. Secondary to that, what happens weather-wise in mundane astrology when certain planets hit 29 degrees. The reason why I'm focusing on 29 degrees in this mundane area of astrology is because I believe that it absolutely rolls over into criminal astrology, and 29 degrees is always an extremely pivotal point in a criminal chart. So I wanted to show you the power of 29 degrees. Now the chart that I've picked is this one of the footage that you saw. The time that the earthquake began was 2:46, and that was in Sendai, Japan. And then the time that the tsunami hit, it was 3:14 p.m, so half an hour later. There's not a lot of difference, but there's a few little differences. So first of all, what are we to glean from this? If we zoom in here, we can see, if I can get that out of there, we have, well, firstly a moon which is at 0 degrees of Gemini. So the moon was just in 29 degrees just prior to that, probably an hour before the moon was at 29 degrees. Then we have Uranus right here at 29:57, and then we have Neptune, that's 29:57 of Pisces. Then we have Neptune at 29 degrees and 12 minutes of Aquarius. So same in this one, the 29 degree Uranus in Pisces and 29 degree Neptune in Aquarius, the moon, and also Saturn and Pluto are points that we're going to look at. So what I'm going to do is show you which planets and which areas rule, well, earth, wind, water and fire. Earth, air, fire, water, the elements. The first thing to know is Uranus. Uranus, when it is at 29 degrees of any sign, so when it is in the last degree of any sign, Uranus unleashes vast amounts of energy. Now, several times throughout the video of the Japanese tsunami and earthquake, it was translated and many people said, the energy of this is unbelievable. Look at the power. So there was so much power behind the earthquake and the tsunami. Uranus rules earthquakes in astrology and sudden catastrophic events. Uranus in Pisces at 29 degrees gives us an earthquake, which is Uranus, that turns into a tsunami, which is water, which is Pisces, that wipes out thousands of people, which is at 29 degrees. Neptune in these instances can give immense suffering. Obviously, Neptune is also water, and Pisces is water. Neptune Aquarius is a large-scale suffering from a sudden catastrophic event. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus in modern astrology, leading to death, which is Saturn, traditional astrology. Pluto is suffering and destruction. We'll talk more about these as we go, but it's just a basic. Jupiter is in Aries in this chart, which amplifies the fire, which then leads to the power plant, which catches alight, and there's a lot of fire involved in this. So we have earth, water and fire and air. Basically, it's all going up in the air as well. So Jupiter in Aries is in aspect to Pluto and Neptune. Okay, volcanoes, I'm just doing general weather as well now, just for us nerds. Grab your notebook. Volcanoes are ruled by Pluto because they're so destructive, and the explosion of lava is very Pluto-like. Tornadoes are in the air, and they're ruled by Uranus, which is related to Aquarius, which is an air sign. Fires are obviously fire signs, which are Leo, Aries and Sagittarius. Neptune, water. Pisces, water. Capricorn is the earth, so earthquakes. And Capricorn is also Saturn as well. We have to put the two together, so that's earth as well. Gemini is the air. Aquarius is air as well, but Saturn rules old Aquarius and Saturn is earth. Taurus is earth, Virgo earth, Leo fire, Sagittarius fire. Okay, so going back on these charts, we're going to focus on this one here, which was the very beginning of the earthquake. So I've zoomed in a lot here, but let's see what we can see. So we have 16 degrees of Leo rising. Now this is the nation. Then here, which is the sun, is squished right in between powerful Mars and Uranus at 29 degrees, which really shows that power plant. So to me, the Leo on the ascendant here shows pretty much a part of the end result and what was happening all the way through. There were fires sporadically going on during this event. So when we look at a mundane chart like this, how I see it is that the 7th house, if the first house or the ascendant is the nation or the country in question, then the 7th house is the public enemy of that nation. Neptune at 29 degrees of Aquarius, which, as I explained, is the sea at its angriest, basically, in relation to the earth. The earth has triggered an angry sea. The weather is the enemy of the country at this time. Now this 29-degree Neptune is making a very harsh square to the moon, which is in Gemini, and which was just prior in Taurus at 29 degrees, which is the Earth as well. So when the moon was at 29 degrees of Taurus, the earthquake would have been brewing. It's coming from the Earth under the surface, and then the actual earthquake itself is Uranus. But also we need to look at Saturn due to the rulership of Saturn to Uranus, and we look at Pluto for the destruction that came due to the earthquake that then led to the tsunami. Now this here is the 8th house of death, as I always tell everybody. I'll just put that there. That's the 8th house. And inside the 8th house of death we have a whole bunch of planets in Pisces, which is water. Predominantly it's the water, the tsunami and the flooding that killed 20,000 or more people. Now we have Mars in there, the Sun in there, and Uranus at 29 degrees 57 of Pisces. So Uranus is the sudden cataclysmic event, the shaking of the ground that led to the surge of water, Pisces, that killed many, many people in different areas, and specifically entire neighborhoods, which is represented by Mercury there. Then we have Jupiter in a T-square here. So Jupiter is in Aries, which is bringing about bigger fury with the weather. Aries is fury and rage, so it's giving us more of that. That's in an opposition with Saturn at 15 degrees of Libra. 15 degrees of Libra is not a good spot. It is known to be a bad position, especially in horary and event charts. So Saturn's not in a good spot. And then midway between Saturn and Jupiter, we have Pluto, the destroyer. So everything here is not good at all. We have two 29-degree planets that are in mutual reception, and this is actually the very last day that they are in mutual reception. They went out with a bang. Like I said prior, these would have all been in exact aspect to the moon, only an hour or less prior to the earthquake in Taurus, which is the Earth. So this chart is very, very representative of what happened. The IC, which is this line here, the end of the matter, 8 degrees there, is in Scorpio. That's this one here, little M with an arrow. And Scorpio is what you saw on that video, the mucky seawater that carried everything in its path. It's a mixture of water and Pluto. It's the destruction of that town. That was the end result. In the grander scheme of things, do we have to wonder that maybe the initial point was to get rid of the power plant? I don't know whether the universe thinks like that, but sometimes the chart, I don't know, it tends to lean that way to me. What I do want to have a look at though is a couple of Sabian symbols as well, just to give you a good, more rounded idea of this chart. Because Saturn represents death itself, and it's important because it's in this T-square, and it's in this position of not being good and retrograde. Let's see what the Sabian symbol for this is. Okay, as you'll see here, Saturn in the Japan chart it's rounded up to the 16th degree of Libra. The 16th degree of Libra Sabian symbol is after the storms of winter, a boat landing stands in need of reconstruction. It's actually remarkable at how specific this is to this particular degree of Saturn. The key words are temporary loss, emotional repair, tools to repair damage and build a new life, having faith that the worst is over and recovery can begin, calling in the experts, taking time to put the pieces back together, working to ensure the safety of the community, the fragility of man's world in the face of nature. That is really uncanny to me and quite remarkable. Show you this as well. These are the signs and the planets relative to it. So in terms of weather, Aries and Mars is hot, dry, extreme, clear, catalytic, bright, fairly windy. Taurus and Venus is mild, temperate, productively wet, cloudy, calm. Gemini and Mercury is cold, variable, dry, and very windy. Now it's interesting to note that the moon is at 0 degrees of Gemini. It's so windy there. You can see that in the video. Cancer and the moon is cold, very wet, and fairly still. Now, also something to note is the moon is obviously important in tsunamis. The moon controls the tides. What we often notice in events like this is that it's the precursor to the event is an eclipse or something going on with the moon. So that's also something else to note. Leo and the sun is often warm and dry, sunny and clear, bright, thundery and still. So in the chart with the Leo rising, that could actually show that although at the time there was an earthquake, it was actually sunny, clear and bright, and there's footage of that. You can see there's blue skies. Virgo and Mercury are cold, dry, windy and blustery. Libra, not Venus, is cool, mild, dry, bright, windy, refreshing. Scorpio and Pluto, extreme, wet, drizzly and destructive. So Scorpio was the end of the matter. So there we have that. Destructive, wet, extreme. Sagittarius and Jupiter, warm, balmy, dryish, pleasant, bright. Big events can be seen in mundane with Jupiter. Saturn and Capricorn, very cold, wet, gloomy, unseasonable, disagreeable and destructive weather. Uranus and Aquarius, cold, changeable, windy, gusty, thundery earthquakes and volcanoes, all the things that erupt and happen quickly. Pisces and Neptune is cool, wet, misty, foggy, calm, flooding, waves, the ocean, bodies of water, anything to do with water. Tsunamis. That should be written in there. Tsunamis. This chart is for 314. It's when the tsunami hit. Now the only difference is that the ascendant is at 22 degrees of Leo now instead of 16. Jupiter has moved from the 9th house into the 8th house of death, so now we have even more planets in the 8th house of death, which is not good at all. Jupiter there just adds to the death toll, especially when opposing Saturn and squaring Pluto. And everything is really tightening up around this 7th and 8th area here. So at this point in time, the wave has hit. There was 3 or 4 successively and then even more. and that to me is shown by this Uranus and Neptune at 29 degrees. Like I said, they're in mutual reception, so the natural ruler of Uranus is Aquarius and the natural ruler of Neptune is Pisces, but they are opposite. So this very last day of mutual rulership is absolutely pummeling Japan at this time. So the power of 29 degrees is absolutely awesome, and it translates not only from weather but over to criminal charts. As I said, it shows in the person's mind or psyche the same type of explosive power.
Yesterday, the winds, as expected, picking back up again on Wednesday. Red flag warnings throughout Northern California, which means more winds, more fire conditions. Yesterday, more evacuations were held, and overnight as well. There are now 51 shelters that have opened in 10 different counties, and more resources are coming in. We are getting resources from Nevada, Oregon, and there are talks with other states about possibly sending more resources. I mentioned evacuations are going on. We want to urge you to monitor your local law enforcement agencies for the very latest information. Search and rescue efforts are also taking place, not only for people, but for animals and wildlife as well. And yesterday, because of these fires, a record day for CAL FIRE. They dropped over 266,000 gallons of fire retardant. You can see some of the devastation from the communities throughout Northern California.
Now, this chart is a different one again. It's a natural disaster again, but it's the fires in, I can't quite get that, the fires in California now I picked the date of the 9th of November 2018 at 5 p.m. That's when a lot of news was taken about that time, but basically it's very interesting because Uranus here is at 29 degrees of Aries, the fire sign. So there's the trigger for the fire, and as you'll see here, this is an ephemeris. Uranus, this is November 2018. Uranus was at 0 Taurus and then went retrograde at 29. So on that date it was at 29 degrees. Then that's actually the final 29 degrees. When we go back to 2017, which I don't have here, oh, I do have here, 2017. Here we have, again, I'll go up here, Uranus is getting very, very close to 29 degrees, 28, 28, 28. Then it goes retrograde and goes further away from 28 degrees. So what it's doing is it's doing its 3-swinged retrograde process and hitting 29 degrees of Aries 3 times. The fires in California and Malibu lasted throughout 2017 and then started up again and went through November or October, November, December of 2018, all when Uranus was at 29 degrees of Aries here, fire. So there's our instigator there. Now, not only that, we have Taurus rising, so that's California. That's the Earth. The Earth is on fire in California. The enemy of the Earth in California at that time is Jupiter, believe it or not, at 0 degrees of Sagittarius. It is bringing about, Sagittarius is a fire sign, and 0 degrees is a brand new fire. It's like a bigger, better fire. Not that a fire's better, but you know what I mean. It's gone past 29 and we're at 0 and it's still going for it. So we've got these really strong anoretic degrees of 29 and 0 in the fire signs for the fires in 2017 and 18. So we have a couple of aspects between Mars and Uranus. Chiron is at the midpoint, so lots of wounding, lots and lots of wounding. In fact, that being in Neptune being there in Pisces and Chiron, the moon being there and Uranus being there, I'm starting to wonder if that was around the time when there was actually a mudslide when there was fires. I'm going to look that one up because this seems to represent what could be a mudslide to me, but I'll have a look at that. In fact, I'm going to have a look right now and see what mudslides are represented by. I would think it would be Capricorn, Saturn, Neptune and Pisces. That's my guess. I just looked in my book of rulerships by Rex Bills, and it is Saturn, Capricorn, Neptune and Scorpio. Right here, the sun in Scorpio, mudslides. Now I actually really want to find the date for the mudslides. Okay, so it turns out I just did some research. There were lots of mudslides, but the mudslides were around the same dates. That Uranus was at 29 degrees of Aries. So that's really interesting to me. Not only does it indicate tsunamis, the 29 degrees I mean, earthquakes, volcanoes, we've also got mudslides in there as well. You know, it's never usually one thing, it's always one thing with another and then another, like the tsunami. The earthquake led to the tsunami led to the fires, then the poisons of Neptune were let out into the air because of the power plant. So it covers all four elements. Now here with the fires we have Aries, which is fire, Uranus, which is sudden events. Then we have Saturn in Sagittarius, Saturn in Capricorn in the 8th house of death, making a trine to that Uranus. So there's an aspect to death there, but also to mudslides. And then once again we have Pluto in Capricorn at the midpoint. So see where this blue line here and this blue line here, the midpoint of Neptune and the Sun. So we've got this scorching, floody, muddy sun flooding and all things Neptunian and Pisces, and then destruction at the midpoint of Pluto. So that whole period of time was not going to be good because this 29 degrees triggers off all these things. So see, we can see there's it's a minor aspect, but there's even aspects between Neptune and Uranus. Jupiter, which I mentioned before, is in quincunx with Uranus. Interestingly, these are actually out of sign aspects which I use because I find that they show us something quite different. So even though these are out of sign aspects, so the quincunx is 0 degrees of Sagittarius and 29 degrees of Aries, we've got two fire signs that are making contact with each other there. And that's exactly what's happening. A huge Jupiter, fire, Aries, that suddenly happened, Uranus, and caused chaos and devastation, 29 degrees. Tsunami chart now, sorry, I'm flipping back and forth, is that we have a semi-sextile, so that's an aspect between Mercury and Chiron, both at 2 degrees. Then also we have another mutual reception between Jupiter in Aries and Mars in Pisces. Now that is really interesting, because the interpretation of that is Mars is expressing itself violently in the water, the expanding ability of Jupiter in fiery Aries. So that mutual reception is also very pivotal. Okay, so I won't carry on forever and ever. I just really wanted to talk about the effects of 29 degrees and how explosive it can be. Then I'm going to the next video I do, I'm going to show you how many moons and other planets are right there at 29 degrees of an event. I'd probably say at least 60 to 70% of the charts that I do, the moon is at 29 degrees. So the next video is just going to show you that. I'm going to show you all of the charts that I have done throughout the years where the moon has been at 29 degrees when a pivotal situation has occurred, or a crime or a murder or a kidnapping has occurred. Now, that's not to put fear into anybody that's got 29 degree planets. What it does, if you're sane and if you're not the weather, is gives you a lot of experience and strength and ability. If it's in a fire sign, it can make you a little bit angry. You know, there's no harm in saying that. If it's in a water sign, it can make you over the top upset. You know, it just adds a little oomph to everything. But in the criminal chart, it shows us a person or something, a situation, motive, whatever it is, something that's gone too far and pushed over the edge. In weather or mundane, as we're seeing here, it's showing us the fury of violent behavior in weather. And I just thought it was interesting to show the combination of the two and have a look at those 29 degrees. So if you haven't seen the documentary on National Geographic about the tsunami and earthquake in Japan, I highly recommend watching it. It's extremely sad, but it is unbelievable, the power. And as I said at the beginning, Uranus, especially at 29 degrees, unleashes immense power. And unfortunately that day it did, and it killed, like I said, over 20,000 people. Okay guys, just a quick one on weather, quick one on 29 degrees. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about with 29 degrees, please have a look through my videos and take a shot every time you see 29 degrees. You'll be drunk within 5 minutes. No, I don't condone doing that. But in all seriousness, it could be a drinking game because it happens so often. No, for real. Enjoy your evening. I hope this was somewhat beneficial to people that are interested in mundane astrology. And I know that it certainly interests me to see these 29 degree marks. Especially when we're seeing something so clear as a tsunami and earthquake, which is represented by these planets exactly. So once again, a very spot on chart, very accurate for the event that happened at the time. Take care everyone. Take care everyone. See you later. Bye.